Today I'm going to try to restitch my welding glove. As you can see, you get a good case of hot finger every once in a while. And I've also got it coming unstitched here. The number one cause of me getting new welding gloves has been stitching coming loose, so let me see if I can fix that. So the first trick is to use 100% cotton thread, and I'm using darning thread that I got from a sewing store. It's harder to find, but you want 100% pure cotton. The last thing you want is this stuff. It's 100% polyester stuff. The first gloves I did with polyester, and within 5 minutes it had melted. And you say, well, but I'm going to do the inside of the glove and it's not going to be exposed. Well, that's what I thought. And enough of it's exposed that it melts away really fast. So avoid the polyester. For needles, you can use these big monster needles like these, or you can use a curved needle. You can get these at a leather store. The curved needle is okay. In some places it works really well because it allows you to kind of hook the two pieces of fabric together. However, I found if you really have to pull on it, you need to use pliers or something to pull on it. When you pull, it doesn't pull straight. It pulls in a curve and kind of tears at the glove. So most of the time I just go with a needle that's just big enough that I can get the thread through the eye. So I've got my needle threaded up. Again, I used the smallest needle I could that would pass this thread through it. As you can see, the eye is pretty tiny. And then you just tie a knot in the other end of the thread. So just run it through there, tie off a knot in the other end. Very rarely can you stitch these from the outside. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to turn the glove inside out. You don't have to turn the whole glove inside out, just those places where you need to stitch. So what I've done is I pulled the finger that I'm going to mend inside out, so it's inside the glove. Resist the temptation to use needle nose pliers or such, because what you can do is rip a big chunk out of the leather or out of the liner, and then you're pretty much done. So then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to pull the other fingers inside out. I'm just going to push them back into the cuff back in here. And you could turn them all inside out, but it takes minutes and a lot of patience. So I'm just going to fold them back in there so that I can give myself enough working room on the finger that needs repair. You can start to see it right there. So here's the tip of my finger that's in need of stitching, and as you can see, the leather's not torn or anything. It's just a matter of you can still see the stitch holes right here. So I'm just going to lay them back together, match up the stitch holes as well as possible, and then restitch it. And also the lining, I'm going to put the lining back on. It's usually stitched separately, and sometimes I use a thinner thread, but put the lining back on it. And also I've got to make sure that I can reach this spot down in here where it's unstitched, and there it is right there. So what I've done here is I've gone back to where the stitching is still good, so like 2 or 3 stitches back into where it's good, and I've gone through, start over here away from the opening, start through here using the original stitch hole. You notice I'm going through the original stitch hole and then back again. And then what I'm going to do is, if I can do this while looking through a viewfinder, I'm going to run the needle between these 2 threads like this, loop it over there, and pull it, and that will tie off, that'll secure this end of it. And then I will be able to go on stitching. Watch out for tangles, keep things in order. So I got a tangle here I'm going to have to work out, but that'll anchor this end of it. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and forth through the original thread holes, and again lining up the ones. It's easy to do where they're already lined up for you, but make sure you match them here. Once you get to the place where it's no longer stitched, it may be easier to pull the needle through here and pull it through this piping, this leather piping, and then put it through the other side and do it in three separate motions. And if you hit the holes, it will pass through quite easily, and if not, see, I haven't gotten the hole, it will stick. So you want to make sure you go back and carefully find the hole. and pass it through there and keep going, and make sure you get the correct hole. You don't want to skip a hole and go on to the next one because you'll cause puckers in the leather that you don't want. So I'm going to start over here, find this hole. See how easily that went through there? You don't have to pull it tight. You can go back later and pull it tight if you need to. This hole is a little bit off. I may want to establish a new hole. I won't this time. So you can see I'm doing this one piece at a time. And here's the hole I need right there. And I can check on the back side to make sure, yes, it's right about there. So I will pass it through there like that. Find the next stitch hole. Looks like that's it right there, and see how easily it passes through there. Find the next hole in the piping. It looks like they missed the piping on that one. So I'll punch it through there. One advantage of a small needle is sharp. It's easier to pass through this. And then it looks like right here is my next, and there it goes. Just passes quite easily through there. So I'm getting down to the end, and before I finish, what I want to do is I want to go back and I want to make sure these stitches are tight. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to take this big fat needle and I'm going to get in here and I'm going to pull them tight, each one of them, and pull the excess thread down to here. And then I've gone past where the hole was and where the stitching is still good, and 3, 4, 5 stitches make a loop. Then I'll pass the needle through there and I'll tie it off in a knot once I get that out of there. But let me show you that step. I'll tighten these threads up. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to go back and give a light tug on each one of these, pull out the excess loop here. You have to flip the glove over, pull it tight on each side, and then just progress down like that. So I pulled that one out. See, that one is now tight. Pull this one. Gentle tug. You don't want to break the thread. You want to get both threads, pull them evenly. So you see how much I've got there, but it's closing off this gap. Sometimes you have to do this process twice. You don't want to leave a loop like that. Fingers are good because it's less likely to break. But then you'll do that all the way down until you get to here, pull out that excess, and then it's once you've tied this off, it's pretty much good to go. Just for a demonstration, I did what they call a whip stitch, and you just go around and around and around like this. It's not really preferred, but sometimes it can help close off a gap. You can see here, and here it'll help close up a seam. And the drawback is the thread is exposed, so it's very easy to damage the thread here and have it come unstitched. But as a reinforcement on the back side, it might not hurt. In fact, I'm thinking about going up here to where we just repaired it and go over and whip stitch that because that's a high stress area. Here's a trick that will keep you from busting off your thread. I'm reusing this same thread. I got some left over, so I'm going to start sewing again. But you can see up in here, it's really fuzzy around where it passes through the eye of the needle. What you can do is you can move this over a little bit so it's in a nice strong area of thread, and tie it off that way so that the weaker spot's back here. That way the eye is pulling on a stronger part of the thread, and it won't break as easily. And here's the piece along the side of my hand. I both stitched and a whip stitch, just for fun, no particular reason, but anyway, so that piece is done. I also had to put the liners back on. As you saw earlier, there was no liner there. I had to pull it back up in place and restitch it. These are cheap gloves. They're only stitched at the fingertips. So what I did is I just put the liner back on there, and I stitched to the same lines as before when I repaired the fingertips. It's the same thread holes and everything. So now the fingertip has a double set of threads on there, which is even better. And all that's left to do is turn the glove back inside out. Well, there we have it. All ready to go for another few projects. Well, I hope you found it interesting and useful.